Welcome to Sex with Rebecca, a show geared towards relationships and sexuality that will help you enjoy your relationships more than you ever thought possible. So send us your difficult questions and we'll bring you expert answers unlike anywhere else. On tonight's show, we'll be discussing romance with our very special guest, Mark Laing. Mark is not only a registered psychotherapist and a marriage counselor who saves marriages in trouble, he's also known as one of the most romantic guys around. So listen up, because tonight's going to be a real treat. Welcome, Mark. It's always a pleasure to have you joining us.
Always fun to spend some time with you, Rebecca.
Mark, I'm finding that more and more people are doing away with that hardcore romance, even though it's so important. So can you please begin the discussion by telling us, why is romance so important?
Well, the word romance itself suggests mystery.
Mystery.
It's not just excitement, which is what so many people play on romance. So, probably if you asked most males about romance, they'd be thinking about getting laid. Okay?
And women will be thinking roses and candles and dinner.
They might, not always,
Yeah.
but I'm saying just in a general sense. But there's that. The word romance actually originally comes from a place that talked about chivalry.
Chivalry.
Right. And so one author talks about, every man's dream is to go on an adventure, slay a dragon, and win a beauty. And if you talk to women, if I said to them, how many women out there want to marry that guy? They'd all put their hands up, because it's our adventure, I'm the beauty, and they're my dragons.
That's amazing.
And so it's in that kind of understanding, you begin to start unraveling the mystery of romance and the differences. So if he always approaches romance from a masculine, then the feminine in her is not getting filled.
Right.
And then there's a disconnect.
So it's about sort of tapping into each other's psyche to make it happen.
Right. So men need sex in order to feel loved, but women need to feel loved in order to have sex.
Sex, right.
And I would say to any male, I'd love to tell you it works both ways. Generally it doesn't. If you want to have a robust sex life, you need to learn how to romance your wife, how to woo her.
And you know what? In the beginning, when people are doing that, where they're wooing her, pursuing her, making her feel special, that's when they get laid all the time. I mean, it's the limerence stage too, but that's when you get laid, because you're doing that. So I said, do the math. You've done away with this, and suddenly you're expecting your sex life to be untarnished and to stay as robust as the beginning.
So I think there's a lot of similarity between romance and foreplay. As one author puts it, foreplay begins in the kitchen. It's not... she comes down and says, I'm pooped, and he all of a sudden goes, hey, I'm feeling it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And she's kind of looking at him like, ain't going to happen, buddy.
Right. And you know what's funny? I'll have lots of clients where she'll say, after I've done the dishes and I've, put the kids to sleep and I've done this, that, and she's giving me a list of things. And I'm thinking, I'm exhausted just listening to you. So I'm thinking, you want sex. Why aren't you helping her with some of that stuff? Because if you do, then she has more time, she has more energy, and she feels significant.
Well, and again, all those activities she's doing by herself. So she's creating an environment for her that it's just her. So there's no reminder, I have a partner in my life. And in that, then when it comes to going to bed, for example, at this point, it's like, I can do that myself. So
I don't need you, as opposed to, you're with me and we're doing this together.
Well, it may not be so much that I don't need you. I'm just not thinking about you. The key in romance is communicating to their partner that the things that I'm doing are saying that I'm always thinking about you during my day.
Absolutely. And you know how Sue Johnson says interdependence.
Yes.
It's not necessarily dependent or clingy or independent. It's relying on each other and having a sense of that coupleship.
Sure.
Awesome. Now, what are some of the most common obstacles that damper that desire for romance?
Well, probably the most obvious one is an argument, right? Because then we personalize it. You don't love me, what? I marry you. All those kinds of silly narratives we play in our head.
The meanings we attach.
Absolutely. Certainly attachment issues can play a role. So certain attachment issues say, I love you, go away, don't leave me, you know.
Right.
And so for some people, because of family of origin issues, proximity is enough. I don't just you sitting on the couch is enough. I don't need to touch you. I don't need to talk to you. But if you got up and left, I would panic.
It could also be the person whose love language is quality time.
Absolutely.
So lack thereof means you don't love me, and that panic sets in.
And we know with love languages, if your love language is to spend time with me and mine's, acts of service, that if you don't do things for me, I don't feel loved. But if I don't spend time with you, you don't feel loved. And we tend to speak our own love language, which gives our partner a sense that they're not cared for. It's learning to speak the other person's love language that pulls that out, right?
So to use your example, let's say yours is acts of service. You're in the kitchen, you're cooking a beautiful meal for me, and I'm sitting there alone and lonely, and I'm saying, Mark, I'd rather you come sit with me and chat with me. You don't need to make this elaborate meal. We can throw something in the oven and forget about it, and we're both feeling unloved.
Or
because you're saying, why aren't you helping me? Yeah.
Come on in here. Let's cut up all the vegetables for the salad together.
And that's romantic, yeah.
And so it's that sense of camaraderie and partnership that is just so important in maintaining romance. The other area, of course, that really tends to interfere with romance, kids.
Kids.
And the problem with that is that, when kids come along, all of a sudden the world becomes very practical. They got to go to the doctor's appointments, dentist appointments. You got to pick them up. We got parent-teacher night. There's a hockey practice.
There's a schedule.
There's
evenings
a schedule.
Are on schedule.
And I've had clients come in where I've said, in that kind of situation, I said, the only reason you're here is because you guys are incredibly boring. It's this to-do list constantly. And I said, think back before you had kids. You could do what you want, when you want, where you want, how you want, without worry. And then all of a sudden the kids come along and you become hyper-focused. In that, both partners begin to feel distanced from each other, just even through the system and the practicality of the system. It's why you see a blip in the divorce rate around 25 years. It coincides with a lot of empty nesting. So when couples start having kids, they get it backwards. It's the marriage that's till death us do part, not your kids. They're going to grow up and go.
Absolutely.
And if you don't understand that, and if you don't understand the importance that investing in our relationship is job one.
Job one.
And then that allows us to give to our kids. If that does not happen, then it goes from a giving relationship to our kids to a taking relationship from our kids. And now you're going to have kids, they're going to be my future clients.
Right.
Because there'll be attachment issues now. Or anger issues or addiction issues, whatever the case may be. So it is just so key that couples understand that it is important. So one of the aspects of romance is the idea of a date night.
Right.
And that really needs to become sacred. Of all the things.
Sacred, I like that.
All the things that have ever been studied about successful relationships, date night is probably the most overstudied thing, and it's always the same conclusion. Successful relationships have a weekly date night.
Absolutely. And I think we also model for our children what it is that a romantic, healthy relationship looks like. I know my parents, they had a relationship till death do you part. My dad passed away just before the 60th anniversary. And one of the things was they always prioritized each other. And the romance was there until the very end. Great stuff. Giacomo Casanova was neither rich nor attractive, but he was a big believer in romance. He'd plan each evening as if he was going to propose, and to him he was, not marriage, but sex. And as such, he could have any woman he wanted at a time when those things were frowned upon. Sadly, a lot of guys think that they have to be rich or good-looking to be romantic and to do romance right. But you have some great tips for any guy to do romance. So can you, real quick, give us your top ideas for guys to be romantic?
Probably the best thing is, first of all, a mindfulness tip, which is really just thinking about what we call the 1% solution. What can I do today that can communicate to my partner, I love them, I think about them, they float my boat, whatever the case may be, 1% more today than they believed yesterday.
Oh, I love that.
Because anybody can do 1%. Right?
It's so tiny, huh?
Men tend to, try to create the big event. I'm taking you to Hawaii. We'll go to, a restaurant. Dinner's going to be $300, and I'll buy.
Don't need that.
And most women will tell you it's very nice, But many women would say, that really isn't what floats my boat. I say to men, their wives in the room, I'll say, what do you think your wife would like more? A dozen long-stem beautiful roses, or you were driving along one day and came across a field of daisies and you thought it was so beautiful and you hopped the fence and picked a bunch to take home and show her the picture you saw. And some guys will reply and they'll think the roses, but there's not a single woman who's ever said, I'll take the roses. They've all said, I'll take the daisies. And it's not about the flower, it's the meaning.
It's the thought that you put into it.
Right.
It's putting yourself into it.
Right.
Thank you so much, Mark. Still lots more ahead. Words of wisdom from you. Interesting letter, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca, a show where we bring you expert advice on important matters to help your relationships be more intimate, exciting, and emotionally fulfilling. We've been discussing romance with our very special guest, registered psychotherapist and marriage counselor, Mark Laing. Mark, there's that old saying that you alluded to, women want to connect through romance and then they'll have sex, but guys have sex to feel connected. Is there any truth to that?
Well, yeah, because I think at heart, the men need sex because men tend to be very task-oriented. Look what I can do. Even in the bedroom, a lot of the male attitudes is, I'm such a great lover and
but the performance.
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of truth to that. And, when you think about it, what women bring to the table in terms of, spend time with me, really is taking the couple back to how a relationship builds. Healthy relationships and successful long-term relationships tend to build when they build with friendship. When a relationship becomes sexual too early, essentially what happens is there's a stop in the growth of the relationship, and now there's the maintenance of the beauty of the first orgasm with your partner. Of course, you can't keep that up all the time.
Absolutely.
And so friendship turns into then this sense of there's nowhere else I would rather be than right here, right now with you. And then it turns into the sexual. But all of it is all built on friendship and connecting way before the sexual part. The emphasis on sex is really misguiding so many people. When I go in a grocery store and you look at all the magazines, 99% of them are talking about how to have a better orgasm, how to, be better in bed. And not to say that those things aren't good things to learn, but it gives people a sense that the only thing that really matters, the crowning achievement in a marriage, in a successful relationship, is an orgasm.
It's all about the sex.
And performance.
And performance.
Right?
Yeah, and I think it's really important that you mentioned that, like, the lead up to it is so important, because there are studies that actually show that if sex happens too early, it sort of indicates that your relationship is going to end early. But once you bring the friendship into the picture, it is more deliberate. And this is the difference, as our clients tell us. They say that, it's like you just want to have sex, as opposed to you want to have sex with me. And that friendship piece, the deliberate, mindful piece, that fosters that you want to have sex with
the
me.
mystery of romance.
Right. It's not just that you want to have sex, and anyone will do, but you want to have sex with me, and that's important.
It's kind of like when you were a kid and you snooped in your parents' cupboards for your Christmas present, and 3 weeks before Christmas you knew exactly what you were going to get. Christmas Day comes along and you wished you hadn't.
My dad used that example on me when he was talking about stuff. I guess sex and romance are really intertwined, like a tapestry, the way you've been talking about it. But are they one and the same thing to some people?
I think a lot of people think romance and sex are the same, because if the cornerstone is love and desire, then you can build. If the cornerstone is lust, then I think what you're doing is creating, a stop work order, and it will go a distance. But what I often see with many people is they get bored of their partner.
Absolutely.
And then that hurts, right? Because the other person may not be lusting, and they may really be feeling some strong feelings for that person. And, all of a sudden, he stops calling or whatever. It's very painful Sex can be such a painful weapon. And I don't think that anybody intends it to be that way, but they are certainly not caring enough to recognize that, if you just go out planting your seed all over the place, you're creating a lot of unhealthy weeds.
Unhealthy weeds, yeah. Because sex, it can be the container of greatest joy or greatest misery,
Right.
depending upon how you are handling it. Now, are there gender differences in what's considered romantic?
Yeah, so guys tend to think about it from a sexual place, orgasm place. And again, I want to, so you don't get a billion letters of, well, I'm a guy, I don't think that way. I'm just talking.
Glad you covered that.
I'm just talking about it in a general sense,
Yeah.
okay? And kudos to the guys that see it in a more productive way. So there is that. It's about, a lot of guys feel that they have to do the big production, and I think that comes
It's the whole
from
performance type thing, right?
and I think
The
it comes from
goal.
a primitive place inside of I can provide, I can hunt the big lion and bring it home, and proving themselves worthy.
Now, common complaint that you and I hear is there's no romance. What does that even mean with all the stuff that we've been talking about?
When I hear a woman say there's no romance, she's saying I'm not feeling connected. When I hear a man say there's no romance, generally it means she's not wanting to be sexual. And he feels...
So there's the gender difference pops up.
So there's some difficulties that get created in that. And the hard part is trying to get them both to kind of come down a bit and recognize, she needs to understand his sexual needs. He's not wrong. He's just different than you. But he also needs to understand that what will improve both her need for connection and the likelihood of having sex is recognizing that it's the little things that he'll do. It's not the big things, like coming home and setting the table while she's making dinner. It's not asking her, how was your day? It'd be asking her something like, what was your favorite part of the day? Right?
And right there is the difference. It's not just how was your day? Oh, it's fine. Because you're going to give a generic answer. Favorite part of the day, now you're going to think about it and you're going to light up and you're going to share something. And then you see them light up and they feel themselves lighting up. So you've changed the dynamic right then and there. What do you advise those couples who bring that problem to you? So certainly you're talking about being a bit more deliberate. Is there any real quick tip before we go to break?
So Stan Tatkin has a thing called the welcome home exercise that I've used many times with couples, just because you've got to kind of reintroduce them back to the romance, right? And in this, when whoever comes home last announces to their partner that they're home, the partner stops what they're
Honey,
doing.
I'm home.
Yeah. And they hug belly to belly. And that's very important. And they just hug until both parties go, this is not a groping time. This is not anybody sticking their tongue down to the other person's toes. This is just a hugging and a synchronizing. It's kind of saying, we're at home and this is our safe place.
This is good and relaxing. And it's a very deliberate hug. You know it when someone just gives you a hug or they just hold you, that like they don't want to let you go, and then your breathing has synchronized.
And a lot of couples will talk about that. One will come back, after, they're instructed to do this, and one will come back and say, it was really hard for me to do. It was kind of like, okay, that's enough. And so they're really not just being mindful of the stress within their own body. They're reacting to the stress in the body and avoiding it.
Instead of just kind of releasing it and being in the moment. And that word safety is so important. Thank you so much, Mark. Great stuff. When we return, we'll be discussing how romance changes over the years. So stay with us. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca, a show geared towards making your relationships the very best they can be, both in and out of the bedroom. We've been discussing romance with Mark Laing, a man who's helped many a couple find their way back into each other's arms as a couples counselor. Mark, we all know about limerence. That's that initial shiny, sexy stage that's hard to maintain forever. So can you tell us how romance changes over the length of a relationship?
I see essentially two major differences that occur. The first half of life, like from 20 on to about 40, is a time of accumulation. I got to get married, I got to have kids, got to get a house, got to get a car. So it starts off with the romance initially, but then it becomes very practical. And then about 45, there's kind of these 5 years of the dark ages. When we come out of 45, we realize we got all this stuff, but I feel really unfulfilled. And so we enter into this second half of life of searching for meaning and purpose. I wish we could have had that at the beginning, because you're not going to find meaning and purpose out of building a house. They're lovely things to have, but they don't give people a sense of meaning and purpose. So the way it changes is it starts off with this, really hot and heavy, I love you,
Sweaty.
I need you, yeah. And then it becomes very practical, pick up the kids, I need you to get milk and bacon from the store. And then all of a sudden, couples find themselves often around the time the kids are in their teens, mid-teens.
And they have their own lives.
Yeah, and they start feeling really empty. And the first thing that so many people do is start thinking, well, I'm empty, and it must be because I'm married to you.
Yes, and that's not necessarily
And that's
at
not
all.
it. What they're recognizing is that the romance and the wooing has ceased to exist. We just run this system, and essentially we're bored to death. So this is, of course, a very significant time when affairs occur, because people are looking for excitement, but they're mistaking lust as being romance.
And it's not about finding a new partner, it's about becoming a better partner and working with the partner you already have. And
Right.
that's something that people tend to miss. Now, what are some of the things that couples can do to infuse that romance into the different stages? So we know initially we don't need that much work. Then you talked a little bit about when the kids come, we need to be number one to each other. We
Right.
can't put the kids and the practical ahead of it. Now, when we're entering this phase where people are looking for affairs, what's a way to avoid that and make your own relationship exciting? Do you have any couple of quick
Okay,
hints?
so first off, date night is so important
That's
that
always
we
there.
do that, right? Because that's a minimum of 2 hours once a week where you don't talk about the problems, the hassles of kids. You go out and have fun.
Fun.
And you have it always in the same night if you can, because sometimes when date night comes around, you feel, I love you, and it's easy. Some nights you've had fights, and it's like, I wish murder were legal. And so date night doesn't ask whether you feel like it. Date night says, you need this.
This is what we need to do.
You need
and tonight
this.
is date night.
It's the relationship speaking, not you.
I
Right?
like that. And then it's like we are doing this. So
Right.
if we are fighting, we try to put ourselves in the right mood, because I'm not going to go out to dinner with you and it's going to be
Sure.
heavy. So let's kind of make
Yep.
up before we do.
And a date night is not made better by how much you spend. Some of the simplest dates are often some of people's favorite dates. Next would be a sense of, we need to check in maybe quarterly. How am I doing as a partner? And whatever your partner tells you isn't that, you suck, It's what they're doing is they're teaching you about who they are and what they need to feel loved and valued, right? So it's not that you're failing, is that these are the things that I need in life. But so often when somebody says, a partner says, well, I wish you did or didn't do this. Oh, you're just saying I suck as a partner. It's like, get over yourself. You're not that important.
So if it's worded as a check-in, then we know that's the whole point
It's a
behind
check-in.
it. Then it doesn't come across poorly.
So when it's listening for the purpose of listening out of curiosity, not to react, it's listening where you just let it be about your partner. That in that moment, as you bring these things and needs to the table, I'm learning about you. And the truth be told, people change significantly every 5 years. So if I said to my wife when we got married, if you ever hear me say, I got you figured out, shoot me now. Because I've stopped being the student. I've stopped
And you've stopped
being willing
growing.
to learn. And that means I've stopped being romantic as well.
Yeah, because you think you've already arrived.
Yes.
And I think the way you put it, it's really important because you are, the way you word it is that this is about the longing. We've had this move from hell over the last 6 weeks, and my husband was really busy making everything perfect. He's fixing that, he's doing the garden, and we weren't spending time together. So I said to him, honey, we're going to have the perfect house, but we're not going to have the perfect home
Right.
if we keep up at this pace
Yes.
because we're not taking time together. And I want a perfect home. I don't care if it takes us 3 additional months to get the house
Yes.
ready, but it needs to be the home. So meaning, and it wasn't taken poorly. It was like, I appreciate what you're doing, but my longing is to spend more time with you and less time being totally focused
It's
on getting the house
accepting
ready.
that all of that, those longings too, are an ebb and flow. David Rico wrote, the 5 longings.
Yes.
And what a brilliant
Beautiful book.
concept, because, things like love and joy, for example, are things that visit us. They don't stay with us. Right?
Make the most of them when they visit.
When they visit, it's a wonderful thing. But the periods in between its visit and its next visit are the most precious. Let's face it, waiting for Christmas is always so much better than once it's over. Right?
It's the building up to it.
Exactly. And so these are things that visit us, but we have to be, as partners, we have to be constantly inviting that back to us. If you and I are fighting, those longings aren't coming anywhere near us.
No. It's like visitors are not going to visit you if you're fighting. They're
Right.
going to say, let's not visit them. They're a crabby
They
couple.
don't need us.
They don't need us. But if you're a happy couple, then the visitors come and they make
Right.
it more robust. Now, 2 places where I see a lot of romantic challenges are, as we said, when the kids arrive and then when they depart, because now you practically don't even know each other and you have the empty nesters. So can you please specifically give us a couple of key points before we close on what can empty nesters do, assuming they haven't kept up the date night?
Right.
What can they do to get back in touch with each
Well,
other?
first of all, I think they need to have an honest conversation about the resentments that they probably have built over the years. And again, it's not to personalize it. It's just saying, essentially, when you are expressing those resentments, what you're saying is, I've missed you, and this is why, and this is how. Okay, and then it's kind of taking that conversation and say, so what were the things that we stopped doing? What were the things that we started doing that was detracting from this, right? Let's do, you could go on the internet and look up, partner report cards. Let's talk about where we're at. Doing a we vision where, minimum 12 statements each person comes up with, each beginning with word we. They describe the relationship you want, not necessarily the one that you currently have, and they're written in the current sense. So it's not we hope to, we wish that. It's like closing your eyes and seeing that relationship and describing it from that picture and saying, for example, we never leave the house without kissing each other goodbye. Because that gives you a sense of where you want to go to, right?
And if you have a destination in mind, then
Right.
you're going to go to it. Otherwise, you don't know where you're
I
going.
don't want couples to spend a lot of time talking about where we are right now, how ticked I am, and
It's
how
like
angry I am.
where I want to be and sharing that vision.
Right.
Great stuff, Mark. That's absolutely incredible. And this is what will allow them to move into the right direction instead of getting caught in that murky place.
Yeah.
You always give us so much good stuff. Thank you again.
Always happy to be here.
I'm Rebecca Rosenblatt, your host, wishing you happy, healthy, and passionate relationships. Until next time.